Hello and you're very welcome to this year's Irish Grassland Association sheep event for 2021. We're delighted over the next 3 days to bring you our online virtual event in which we will feature 3 very interesting farmers with 3 very unique stories. We're delighted to be on the farms of Alan Cole in Athy in County Kildare, Peter McGuinness in Trim in County Meath, and our final farmer coming all the way from Scotland is Neil McGowan. All 3 farmers will have a very interesting story to tell, and hopefully it will be of interest and a lot of tips available that you can use at home on your own farms. I want to thank the involvement of all our farmers. In the Irish Grassland Association, everything we do depends on our host farmers to contribute and make their information and their stories available, and we very much appreciate the support of all 3 farmers. I want to thank Alan Bohan, the chairman of our sheep subcommittee this year, the organising team for this event, and all his subcommittee members who have contributed so well to putting together this virtual event. And also, as always, we're very much indebted to the back office work of Maura Callery in the Irish Grassland Association for all her work. My final thank you before we hand you over for the main event is to thank our sponsors, Mullinahone Co-op, who have been a long-term supporter of our sheep event in the Irish Grassland Association, and we very much appreciate their support again this year. And I hand you now to James Manley from Mullinahone Co-op, who will say a few words before we proceed with our event for 2021.
Thanks, Dan. It is a real pleasure for Mullinahone Co-op Eurotags to be supporting the Irish Grassland Association Sheep Event 2021. Farming sectors are an important part of our animal identification business at Mullinahone Eurotags. As Ireland's largest seller of official ID tags, we believe the cornerstone of any sector in agriculture starts with its traceability, and this is why we offer our customers the full range of Allflex animal identification products, both official electronic EID and visual tags for both cattle and sheep, and we also offer a full range of genomic DNA tissue sampling tags. As technology is becoming more and more a part of everyday farming, Mullinahone is leading the way by offering the full range of Allflex AgriDent electronic stick and handheld readers for use with EID tags, which helps reduce labour costs on farm with its ability to accurately and quickly collect and store key data to aid with the weighing, treatments and movement of animals. We would like to wish every success to the Irish Grassland Association with their Sheep Event 2021, and we are looking forward to hearing from some very key, interesting speakers from the event. At Mullinahone Co-op Eurotags, we are here to work with you.
Good evening, my name is Alan Bohan, and you're all very welcome to the Irish Grassland Association virtual sheep farm walk on the farm of Peter and Tom McGuinness. Delighted to be joined here by Peter McGuinness. And I suppose, Peter, as a way of starting, could you give us an overview of the farm here that you're running with your father?
Yeah, so we're farming here just outside Trim in County Meath alongside my parents, Tom and Anne. We're a mixed farming enterprise here of mainly just sheep and tillage, and we also have a beef finishing unit on the farm, working on a B&B system, and that's all year round. And then in the summer months of May to September, we take in dairy heifers on a daily rate to eat surplus grass. Dad's at home full-time farming himself, and I work part-time in a local feed mill a few days a week. We're farming around about 500 acres here, about 3/4 owned, 1/4 rented. And I suppose previously Dad would have been a beef and suckler and tillage, and then in 2005 he made a decision to get out of the beef altogether and rent out the slatted shed on a B&B system, and that's when we got into sheep.
I suppose there, Peter, you've mentioned there's a few different enterprises on the farm. Firstly, we might just touch briefly on the cattle and tillage side of things, and then we'll get into a bit more depth on the sheep.
Yeah, so starting with the B&B beef finishing unit, that's we've a slatted shed here that'll cater for around about 300 finishing cattle, and that's an all year round system. We supply all the grass silage, the maize silage and the straw to it, and then the owner he brings in the concentrates. There's no overlap between the B&B system with any grazing or the sheep or the dairy heifers. As regards the dairy heifers, we take in around about 100, 120 on a daily rate during the summer months, and they just eat surplus grass, and we graze them alongside the sheep, and that has worked really well in recent years. And then I suppose then the tillage will be our second biggest enterprise there. We're growing wheat, barley and maize generally every year. The maize is also sold into the beef finishing unit, and about half of it then is sold just to local dairy farms. And then the cereals are sold to just a local feed mill.
So I suppose that the main focus of our visit today, Peter, is the sheep enterprise. So maybe if you could give us an overview of that, kind of the numbers and the production, the system of production that you're managing here.
Yes, we have a flock of around about 800 ewes here, lambing all outdoors from mid-March. Breeds are the Suffolk Texel cross, mainly the ewes. Find that just there's a good carcass killer with them, so that's what we've the majority be with that. We'd have mule ewes also, just that bit hardier for the outdoor gig. And about 3 years ago we bought some Romney rams. Carcass quality wouldn't be exactly the best as regards the other breeds, but look, with the outdoor gig, it just helps an awful lot better when you have more live lambs at the end. As regards production, we'd be scanning around about 1.81 and weaning around about 1.45 each year, and replacing between 20 and 25% of the flock each year, with a lamb mortality rate of in around 10%.
Perfect. So I suppose one thing that sets you apart here from a lot of Irish sheep farms is the fact that you're lambing outdoors. Have you always been lambing outdoors, and what do you find the pros and the cons to that system?
Yeah, we've always been lambing outdoors. I suppose we don't know any different that way. Look, we'd find it's an awful lot healthier, and it's a lot less labour intensive. We'd be lambing around about 85% of the flock in the first 3 weeks. So I suppose if we were inside, you're adding a huge amount of labour onto that. Disadvantages, look, the big one is the weather. So when the weather goes against you, it does leave things very difficult. But I suppose you always have to have a plan B. But we've hit bad weather before, and we've managed just fine too. And but look, no, for us the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages, so they do.
Yeah, I suppose you're saying there that you're outwintering the ewes. You're also lambing outdoors. So there's a big demand there for grass for pretty much 12 months of the year. There's obviously a lot of work and a lot of planning goes into ensuring that there's a bank of grass in front of the ewes at all times. How do you plan that? I suppose it probably starts back pre-mating in September, October time of the year. Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, it does. It starts around September, and through the summer, to have as many lambs drafted as possible through the summer. So in 2020, 96% of our lambs were killed by the 30th of September. So that really eases up pressure on the ewes, so they've a good pick of grass. And look, we're building a good wedge of grass then coming into the autumn. And then so fast forward until maybe the 1st of December, the ewes go out onto red start, and they're all outwintered on 25 acres of red start. So I suppose that's given us then a 3-month rest period for the entire farm. So for when the ewes do go out to lamb, that there's a good wedge of grass there, and there's no meal needed to be fed then post lambing, I suppose.
I suppose then, look, lambing 800 ewes in any system is a big undertaking. You're doing it outdoors here. For those of us that aren't that familiar with lambing ewes outdoors, what's the setup? What equipment do you need outside in the field? How do you work labour? What's involved in it?
As regards labour, we myself and Dad are here at home here for all of the lambing. We take in two student vets from UCD each year, who definitely are a great help. They're with us for the first 2 weeks. Just they'd be the busy 2 weeks, I suppose, and then we've one other labour unit comes and helps us then after that. As regards equipment, look, we own 2 quads here and we get in a third one, and look, we definitely wouldn't be able to work without them. And I suppose then all the other equipment is like every other sheep farm in the country. Then you just need the gloves, ropes, lube, and stomach tube. As regards intervention, every sheep in the farm is caught and she's milked into a stomach tube, and the labs are fed accordingly. We only take the lambs that we have to take. We let the ewes do as much as they can do themselves, but where intervention is needed, it takes place.
I suppose, Peter, you make it sound a very simple system, but as you all know, there's nothing simple with sheep. I suppose with outdoor lambing, you're running with more risks, or you have to be a bit more flexible maybe. There'll often be times, I assume, where you'll get hit with a bad spell of weather. So how do you deal with either bad spell of weather or troublesome ewes, such as triplet lambing ewes?
Well, as regards weather, I suppose that's with the outdoor lambing, you really do need to be flexible. That's the number one thing, or even anyone who has any interest in getting into outdoor lambing, you need to be flexible. There needs to be a plan B. So we have the ability to put up 60 or 80 individual pens inside. Look, I do call ourselves an outdoor lambing flock, and we are, but there has to be a plan B there for when you do hit bad weather. We also have small portable 6-foot gates that we can carry around at the front of the quad and set up little pens outside. So for troublesome ewes out in the field, if you can just put up that little pen for a short period of time and it just settles there for a few hours. Then maybe just as for the triplets and whatnot, no sheep on the farm will carry 3 lambs. And I suppose then just before lambing, we lamb the triplets in the 2 paddocks nearest the yard, and they come in at night time just for ease of management. But as I said, no sheep in the farm will rear 3 lambs. There's the largest lamb of the triplets will be taken off and wet fostered onto a single or of a similar size, or maybe a double that has lost a lamb.
So we'll jump forward again, Peter, and we'll say lambing is complete and everything's gone well. You now have your 800 ewes and their lambs out at grass. What's involved in managing that? What sort of group size are you running, or how do you decide the group size?
Yes, we're running three groups of sheep and their lambs post-lambing. 2 groups of 300 ewes and their lambs, and then 1 smaller group. The smaller group is usually just maybe ewe lambs, a few later lambers, and they'll be weaned about 10 days, 2 weeks later than the rest. We picked them group sizes, it's just worked well. Handling facilities, it caters well for that size, and paddocks as well. When you have 300 ewes and their lambs, and into the paddocks that we usually have here around about, they're 3 hectare paddocks, so if you're going into a good pre-grazing yield, you'll be in and out of that paddock in maybe 3 to 4 days. But as I said, look, when you have 300 ewes and their lambs in around the handling facilities, you've got a good bus to work there in front of you, so I suppose you're not kind of running back to paddocks, getting more to come in, so you've plenty in front of you there to work through.
Another thing, I suppose, Peter, then flock health management is a big importance in every flock. Obviously with a flock of this size, there's going to be even a challenge there around labour with flock health management. Could you maybe bring us through how you look after the flock health, or kind of your flock health plan?
Not necessarily we have a flock health plan, but I suppose just at start maybe the calendar year at the ewes, 6 weeks pre-lambing, all the ewes will come in and get their 8-in-1 vaccine shots, so they would then. And then as regards to the ewes for the rest of the year, problems are more so kind of tackled as they arise. So if there's maybe a few thin ewes maybe gone a bit dirty, I suppose they'll be dosed for worms, or as weather conditions maybe deteriorate and the sheep are grazing in wet conditions, there'll be a fluke dose given. Then maybe just as for lameness, look, it's a constant niggling issue in maybe every farm, but every single time that the ewes are in around the handling facilities, they'll be walked through the footpath. And I suppose that kind of keeps on top of it, but I suppose you're always going to have a few lame ewes in every flock. With the lambs, 5 weeks after lambing, they'll be all brought in and given their first white worm dose, and then we usually shear in around the 1st of June, and that's when we give them the clear worm dose. And then the same as the ewes, as maybe lambs kind of get dirty maybe through the summer, they'll be given a worm dose, and we always put cobalt B12 through that. And I find, even though it doesn't last too long in their system, it does put a good shine on them for a period there when it is in their system anyway.
So we're at the stage now, Peter, we're talking about the lambs and keeping them moving. How do you manage your lambs throughout the summer, keeping good grass in front of them and getting up to that stage where you start drafting lambs for slaughter?
Well, I suppose at start, usually we target to get a first cut of silage cut in around the first week of June. So then fast forward 3 weeks later, we've got good top quality kind of aftergrass there, and that's usually when we wean. So we wean in around about the 20th to 25th of June every year. And look, as I said, when they get onto that good leafy aftergrass, lambs they'll hit the ground running. We do feed some meal. In 2020 there was an average of 8 kilos of meal fed per lamb. So not a huge meal bill, but the key thing to it is the good aftergrass. As I said, there was 96% of the lambs were killed by the end of September, mainly all off grass.
So you're saying there, Peter, you're getting 96% of your lambs killed off grass. What sort of live weights are they being drafted at? What sort of dead weights are they killing into? And what are you doing with that remaining 4% of lambs that aren't sent for slaughter?
I suppose that varies from one end, from when we start killing and when we finish killing. So we'll start maybe killing the first few lambs at the end of May, a few big singles, and I suppose they'd be of a live weight maybe 38, 39 kilos. And then maybe the lads will be killed at the end of September. It will be up as high as maybe 45 kilos, but of an average throughout the year we'll be killing around about 42 kilos of live weight and in around the 20 to 21 dead weight. And as regards to stores, 4% of the stores were sold there in the first or second week of October there in 2020. They're just sold off to the mart, just for the simple reason just to give the ewes as much of a preference when they are with the ram.
We can see there from the number of lambs you're getting killed off grass. Grassland management is of huge importance on the farm. You were awarded the 2020 Sheep Grassland Farmer of the Year from the Teagasc Grass 10 programme. How did you get involved with grassland management at the start, and how was the farm set up to allow for that good grassland management?
Yeah, so in 2019, actually, sorry, I joined the Grass 10 programme, and look, that's definitely been an invaluable resource. But a huge thanks to have to go to the Grass 10 team and John Douglas and John Marr there, and my local Chagas advisor Edward Egan, who's been a great help also. But anyone who's more interested into the nitty-gritty end of the grass and things, there's a takeover there on the 30th of June for anyone who's any interest to tune into that. But look, I suppose it all didn't start in 2019 either. Dad would have always had good roots, and he would have had good paddock systems through the whole farm, and would have been putting up temporary fencing also. So it definitely didn't start in 2019, but I suppose just it's a work in progress every year, just improving it. We would reseed around about 10% of the farm each year, and that's definitely crucial as well. So 2020 there was 16% of the farm reseeded. In 2019 there was 8%. So that's a key driving factor to make sure that there is good grass in front of the sheep at all times. Yeah.
And grass measuring then will be a kind of cornerstone of your grassland management. How often are you measuring grass, and how are you using that information to grow more grass, I suppose?
So yeah, in 2019 I bought a plate meter, and throughout the grazing season I'd measure the grass on a weekly basis. But I suppose that's only half of it. The other half is pasture base. Got signed up onto pasture base there, and look, that's plug all your results in there, and that it leaves it very obvious where you have to go next or where you have to skip, and you're an awful lot more confident in making decisions when you can see that wedge in front of you, what days you're ahead, and look, you're making better quality silage, and the sheep and lambs are going into covers that are an awful lot better also.
And I suppose there you can see the benefits of grass measuring. We see it on several farms, and it's been demonstrated here. But we still have a relatively low uptake among dry stock farmers. In your opinion, why do you think there's such a low uptake to it, or what would you advise someone considering starting grass measuring?
Well, anyone that's thinking of start grass measuring, even just get a plate meter, and even just a small proportion of the farm, start measuring that and just see. You'll definitely see results from it. There's no question there at all. Why people aren't, why there isn't such an uptake in it, I'm not entirely sure. But look, it only takes me about an hour and a half a week out of my week to go around and measure, and just that hour and a half that pays definitely dividend here. So look, to anyone, it's not an extra job or anything like that. It definitely pays to do it, and it's not a huge portion out of your week either.
We can see here this morning, Peter, as we walked on the farm, there's a lot of animals around, both sheep and cattle. You have a lot of animals to manage in a grassland management system. How many groups are you running, or how are you managing such numbers of stock?
We would have, just say, maybe starting off with the ewes. The ewes would all be together maybe for 10 days or 2 weeks on a bare paddock just to dry them up, and then they'd be condition scored. Fat ewes would be one bunch and thinner ewes another. And then as for the lambs, we'll have lambs almost fit for killing, kind of one middle range set of lambs that'll be the end of July, August killing, and then the later lambs to be killed, and they'd be in another bunch. So I suppose post weaning there'd be about five groups on the farm. Look, with 5 groups, it's kind of it's enough. We've 21 permanent paddocks on the farm, so the more groups you have, the more you have grazing, and the less time you have paddocks recovering. So I suppose the smaller the number of groups, the better the system we find works here.
I suppose moving on a bit then from the grassland side of things, Peter, and a closer look at yourself and your father. You're involved here since 2018, you were saying. Could you give us a bit of a background of your kind of farming career to date and how you got involved in the farm?
Yeah, well, I've always had a big interest in farming. I was fully sure that that's what I was going to do. I went to WIT and did an agricultural degree, and in third year I went to New Zealand on placement. And I suppose that kind of really put it in concrete that was what I wanted to do when I came home. And I suppose, yeah, I'm home since 2018 there, and all's going well since, thank God.
And you've mentioned there you got the opportunity to travel to New Zealand for your work experience, a great opportunity. I'm wondering, is there anything out there that kind of changed your perspective on how things can be done, or was there any one thing that you picked up out there that you brought home and implemented?
Well, definitely working out there, the grass measuring, that was the first taster of grass measuring that I seen. And look, I've heard of people doing it around here and such, but until you're actually working in a farm and seeing the results of it, that was a big thing I definitely took from. And then look, another was definitely how business driven the farms over there are. Like, they're working on a huge scale, especially the one that I was on, all right. But I suppose there's a perception in Ireland of people kind of keep driving into something maybe that's not fully working. But you need to be business driven, I suppose, for any farm or enterprise really to work out well.
What's interesting here on the farm, Peter, is firstly you're a young farmer and you're working in a partnership with your father. How does that dynamic work? Is it a 50-50 split with regard to management decisions, or how do you even lay out your work for the week ahead?
Yeah, no, it would be. It'd be a 50-50 kind of decision split between the two of us. I suppose there's not a sign exactly that anyone has one assigned job in the farm. I suppose we're all, both of us are more than capable of doing everything that has to be done. But look, it's great that it leaves things more flexible for both of us. And the year I finished college, Mum and Dad were able to go to New Zealand on an agri tour for 5 weeks. And look, it's great that they were able to do that. But had I not been at home, that's probably something that they would have missed out on and wouldn't have been able to do. So I suppose it gives kind of both of us a great work-life balance, that there is two people at home that can do whatever has to be done on any time around the year.
So even if you're with your good work-life balance, as you've mentioned, there's still a huge amount of work to get through on the farm. You have your tillage enterprise, your cattle and your sheep. How do you manage the workload? Do you have a weekly team meeting, or how do you make them decisions between you and your father?
No, look, it's just, I suppose you don't even really realise it either. It's just general daily communication. Both of us at the kitchen table, you wouldn't even really realise you're doing it, but look, you just talk through whatever has to be done. But no, the two of us, we work well together, and always have. Look, naturally enough that there is going to be differences of opinion at some stage or another, but you need to just be able to admit when you're wrong and move on accordingly. That there's no point going around holding a grudge because maybe you didn't get your way in a certain decision. But no, the two of us, we work well together.
And it's one thing very obvious on this farm and in this farm partnership, that it's very much a success story and will be into the future. Some people watching at home might be thinking about having that discussion around succession or around a farm partnership, maybe having it with a parent or a child. What advice would you give them, or where do you think is a good starting point for that discussion?
I suppose it's difficult for me to say where the starting point for every family and farm situation is unique to their own. But look, to anyone around my age or just leaving school or college, go and get experience somewhere else, be it just down the road with a local farmer. Like if you're coming home to farm, you're going to be home long enough, and like a lot of times they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So if go abroad if it's something that you feel that you would be interested in travelling. That there's great farms all across the world. Like New Zealand is a super place to go, and I'd highly recommend it. But when you do come home, I suppose it's nearly harder to leave then. I couldn't imagine now that I'm home 3 years after Dad starting to take a kind of a backward step, that I'd decide to just up and leave and head maybe to the other side of the world again. I suppose that's not really fair for him either, to throw him back into the pit of it all again.
I suppose then, kind of to bring it to a conclusion, Peter, in recent times sheep price has been very good and the sheep trade is very strong. It must give you great optimism for the future, but as well as that, would it make you consider changing the system some bit? Would you think of reducing cattle numbers, maybe upping sheep numbers, something like that?
No, I suppose for the time being things are going to kind of stay as this. Look, it's great, and it is great that the sheep prices are on the rise, and long may it continue. But no, look, the system here, it's not broken, so I'm not going to go try and fix it. And I suppose if we were to go up kind of more dramatically in the sheep numbers, you are bringing extra labour onto the farm, and I suppose when you do start paying wages, you do see kind of a lot of money kind of leave the bank account if you're to employ someone else full time. But no, for the time being, things are working well, so it's going to stay as is.
As we can see, Peter, on the farm today here, things are very well organised and it's running very smoothly. But I suppose, like any farm, there's always room for improvement or something you'd like to work on. For yourself, over the next 5 or 10 years, where do you want to push it, or is there anything you want to work on?
Yeah, no, things are working well, and I suppose you'd have to be thankful to Mum and Dad for that in previous years, how well they've managed the place. Look, going forward, I suppose you always have to be trying to do things better. As regards our replacement policy, we'd be buying in half our replacements, and we had a little touch of abortion maybe a few years ago, and it's hard to know maybe where that came from, but we vaccinated for it. But I suppose our flock biosecurity maybe is something that we do need to look at. And look, I suppose we got 96% of the lambs gone by the 30th of September, and I suppose if you were to push it on a bit better, if you got that figure by the 1st of September, it'd be doing well. But for the time being, we're happy out with the way things are going anyway.
Thanks for all that, Peter. We've got through a lot there in a short space of time. I'd just like to say thanks again to yourself and your father Tom for inviting us onto the farm, and we wish you all every success for the future.
More than welcome.
So thanks again to Peter and Tom McGuinness for allowing us onto their farm to have a look around and do our virtual farm walk. It's not the farm walk we would have wanted, but maybe next year we'll be able to get everyone out on farm and do a real farm walk once again. You can join us tomorrow night where we'll be on a virtual farm walk with Alan Cole in County Kildare, and the following night we'll be with Neil McGowan from Scotland. Thank you.